All right, so welcome to this presentation about how to create systems, which of course is the key to streamlining your practice and to making things run more easily and without so much strain and stress on your part. And systems are part of law firm operations, not part of marketing. So let's just talk about how to create these systems most effectively. And in case you're wondering, my name is Ernie Svensson. This is a little slide about my background as a speaker and author and so forth. And you can check that out if you want to, just hit pause. But I'm going to just dive in with this discussion about systems. And this discussion comes from a question that I got from a lawyer who said the following to me in an email. She said, "My biggest challenge is implementing a new system." Basically she's asking, do you have any good discipline tips to get the job done? Because it's always, the best laid plans go sideways for many reasons. So, I thought about the question for 24 hours because it's an important question and I want to make sure I answer it in the best way possible for her and for anyone else who has this question. So there are several elements to this question. So this was my thought process as I looked at it. I thought, well, what system specifically is she talking about? That's a question I asked myself, but I realized upon thinking about it, that's really a superficial question, because if I start asking about that, we're going to derail from the thing she's really talking about, which was discipline. Like, how do I create discipline and maintain it? That was, the key part of the question. And she said that her best laid plans get derailed. And so the real question is, why? Right? And so what is the foundational problem behind all this? That's really the key thing that I want to address, because I know that that's the key element of this question, which I have gotten variations of from many different lawyers over many different years. So there's several possibilities, for what the foundational issue might be. Like, number one, it might be that, she and other people who have this problem are not prioritizing effectively, right? Because if you're getting waylaid by non-important stuff that masquerades as urgent stuff, that could be the problem. And in the past, I've talked about, the Eisenhower principle, which is, General Eisenhower said that he doesn't have, urgent problems. He has important problems, and the urgent problems are the ones that have this, shock and awe and distress quality to them. But the important stuff is the long range stuff that he's trying to accomplish. And what happens is we all tend to get derailed by urgent stuff that really isn't urgent to us or isn't that urgent, and then we put aside our important stuff and we never get to it. So to prevent that from happening, we think, well, okay, we should focus, right? And focus on getting stuff done and focus on prioritizing. But, there's lots of things you can focus on. And, her question was about systems. So what is the question? Is it, that we don't understand how to create systems in the context of this getting waylaid and so forth? And I want to know, because when I look at these kind of things in my own, challenges and so forth, I'm thinking like, well, what is the big thing that causes other things to happen? Or as they say, what's the lead domino? What's the prime cause? So what is the lead domino here that is causing the problem? Is it not prioritizing effectively? Is it lack of proper focus? Is it don't know how to create systems? Is it discipline, focus, and maybe even habit behavior? Because focus comes from habit behavior. But I'm going to say it's not really any of those things, or at least not, that's not the lead domino. So what is the lead domino? And I would say the lead domino for this kind of problem and other kinds of problems like this, but definitely this one, because I see it in myself when I'm trying to create systems. I see it in other people when they're trying to create systems. There's the mechanics of creating a system, which I can talk about and you can learn about and other people have talked about. But that seems to me to be more likely to be a superficial problem, because I've noticed, people don't have a trouble understanding what the mechanics are. What they seem to have trouble with is something I observe in myself and observe in other people, and that is not having an awareness beyond the awareness of like, well, okay, I need to address this problem, but you're only aware of it periodically, right? So there's this concept that I don't know if other people use this term, but this is the one that pops in my head whenever I think about it, which is meta awareness. Meta means, the thing behind the thing. So behind the awareness of just, I have this problem, there's a meta awareness. And meta awareness in general means being aware of doing something while you're doing it. And in the case of trying to fix it, it means envisioning the long-term possibilities that come from optimizing how you do it, right? So what we really need here, it seems to me, for this kind of problem that, she's asked about and other similar problems, is a system for creating meta awareness. So one part of this is, a habit. So, you need a system for changing your habit, but your habit is your habit of thinking about things while you're doing things. And that's a very, very, foundational thing. Like, it's hard to be aware of thinking while you're thinking, right? That's what meditation is for, and other things that, reflection. But if you're trying to think about what you're thinking about while you're thinking about it, any little disturbance, ripple in the universe messes you up. Like, the phone rings, a shiny object. It's very hard to maintain awareness of what you're thinking about while you're thinking about it. So, that's just a reality, right? So that, you're trying to change a habit, but you're trying to change your habit of thinking and develop meta awareness so that while you're doing a task, oh, gee, maybe I should make this a system. Well, if I'm going to make it a system, what would be the first step? But the first step is to understand you're about to do something that you need to pay attention to at two levels, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So if you want to know the best way to develop, any kind of habit, including the habit of meta awareness, without having to, enroll in some monastery and take time off, because of course that's completely unrealistic, then what you need to do is think about this idea of atomic habit building. There's a lot of books out there about habit building and changing your habits, and believe me, I've not read all of them, but I have read every single one that I come across whenever I'm foundering and trying to figure out how to be more effective. And so I've read a lot of these books, and I kind of skim read a lot of them also because, they all tend to say roughly similar things. But recently I came across something that was completely different. And I realized that the success I've had when I've changed is a result of doing what I learned through this process and in this system I'm going to tell you about. I learned it kind of in a goofy, haphazard way, and I, think I can't tell you, hey, just follow my goofy, haphazard way. So, if you want to learn the system, what I recommend you do is to read this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a New York Times best-selling book. It's Wall Street Journal talks about it. It's been much discussed, and basically the idea here is that instead of trying to attack the problem of changing any habit that you have in a sudden, massive, hyper-focused way, you should try to attack it in a way that's more realistic. And the more realistic way is to try to get a little bit better every day or at every moment. And, well, how do you do that? Well, that's what the book is about. So I'm not going to get all into the book because my goal here is to point you in the right direction. And I think this is the best direction to go in to answer this question, and not just answer the question, but then take action so that you can get over this problem of creating systems and every other problem that you have that stems from trying to figure out how to make a change in your life and your behavior and your way of thinking so that you can get a massive result. Because the reality is we live in a world where we're all busy. Some people have 3 kids, 6 kids. Some people have, all kinds of commitments and so forth. And I'm not in that position now, but I was. And looking back, I realized that, how I was able to make change was to carve out the time I needed and to push through it. But it would have been better if I had a system, and especially if I had a system that I knew worked, and then the system that I could implement. Now, what about this book? How good is this book? Well, on Amazon, I always go to check to see, well, how many people have rated the book? It's only been out a couple of years, and it already has, almost 3,000 customer ratings. And what's astonishing to me, because I'm always looking at the number of ratings before I recommend a book and, before I buy it, and, 70% is pretty good, and then you tack on another 10% or whatever in the 4-star rating. In other words, 70% of 5-star rate, 70% 5-star ratings is good. This book has 88% 5-star ratings. I don't know that I've ever seen I don't remember seeing a book that had this many high ratings. And then the 4-star rating. So if you add those two up, which is what I usually do, then you got 95% are either 4-star or 5-star. That is mind blowing. Now, if you go through and read the top reviews, of course there will be some people who give it 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. Those people are people who I'll bet all of those reviews. I wouldn't go look at them, but I bet you all of those reviews are people who just naysay and critique everything. And those people can't be helped either, ever or until they change their mindset. So I'm not going to worry about those. We're worried about the ones who have good reviews. This is the top review that shows up in Amazon. So it's a verified purchase. This person actually purchased it, and they updated their review after 100 days of working with the book. So the person says previously wrote the review right after reading the book, but today, when they're issuing the review on February 15th, after applying James's system for 100 days on a few tiny habits, he wanted to let us know that they have definitely worked. So that's a good thing to know. And then another review, this fellow talks about, again, verified purchase, the person bought the hardcover, that this person reads a lot of books on changing behavior and building habits, but this is his new favorite book. He says the book is different from others in the way that it covers a lot of ground in a larger area of self-improvement, while seamlessly tying these ideas all back together. And that is what I like about it, because I've read Charles Duhigg's book, which I think is called The Power of Habit or something like that. And it was a good book, but it didn't seem to have enough actionable information. It was more kind of like, generally here's how habits work, which is fine to know, but I want to know how to change things, and I want to be able to start doing it right away. And I don't want to feel overwhelmed or stressed out or feel skeptical or like this isn't going to work. So he mentions this core concept that the idea is to focus on small improvement, and this is a key thing that James Clear, the author of it, talks about. He says, the impact of a 1% improvement per day might seem negligible, but over time it'll be a huge thing. And there's this example, or there's a story about this wizard or something who a Chinese emperor asked to come, and I forget, I'm not going to be able to tell us exactly, but the idea was the guy said, put a grain of rice on the chessboard. He said, I want you to pay me in rice, because rice was what he needed. He said, I want you to put a grain of rice on the chessboard, and then each day double that rice until you get to the end of the squares on the chessboard, and that's how much rice I want you to give me. And the emperor's like, oh, that's not going to be any big deal. But the emperor couldn't fathom the scope of what doubling means, right? So the reality is it's just an ungodly amount of rice, and the emperor couldn't deliver it. And so our brains have trouble wrapping themselves around exponential growth and exponential improvement. We just don't think in those terms. We think linearly, and it's hard for us to grasp this, but this is the power that we're tapping into. Another person who recommended the book said the book is action-oriented. Yes, it is very action-oriented. It's an instruction manual for nurturing good habits and killing bad habits. And this person found out that was really great. Now, what he talks about, he says, one of the principles in the book is about understanding who you want to become. And that, in fact, is what Clear talks about right off the bat in the first chapter. And this really hit home for me, because he said, one of the things, if you say, for example, I'm going to try to quit smoking, that's a habit you're trying to change. Well, so you can try to change things at a couple of different levels. One level is, well, I'm going to change my behavior. But the other one is, I'm going to change my identity. So if you identify with being a smoker, if somebody says, are you a smoker? You say, yes, I am a smoker. If you say those words, I am a smoker, you're reinforcing this identity of being a smoker. So there's a lot of, cool stuff in here about how to understand why that matters and how to address that. It's not just theoretical mumbo jumbo. So he talks about that. And then you'll see, like in this next review, this fellow said, basically, he thought the book was too hypey. He had read Charles Duhigg's book and was, early on in the fog method and all this stuff. And basically he was totally skeptical, and he's telling you this. But then he said, oh, wait, I started to realize this was exactly what I needed to examine, this idea of my identity and other things. So there's a lot more to this review, but he basically at the end says, my advice is, if you're, reading this stuff, these reviews, buy the book. and then read the book and then learn the things and then implement the things and then just keep repeating this. So that's his advice. Now, what's going to keep you from doing this? Is it going to be not prioritizing, focus, not, no, it's none of that stuff. It's going to be this meta awareness issue that we talked about, right? And how can you fix this deficiency? And the answer is you should get this book and read it and then do the things that the people who've read it and gotten the results and therefore are proudly proclaiming that it is an effective book. This is what they say, right? So if you buy a book and you don't read it or you don't implement, you're not going to get the results. Yes, it's a book, right? So there's a tendency when we look at things to think, well, it's just a book. How important could a book be? I'll tell you how important books are for me. Like a lot of the things I've learned, I've learned quickly and implemented because they worked. I learned from other people, right? Like I could never have figured out all the things I figured out. The most efficient way to learn from other people is if they've written a book where they're required to thoughtfully lay out their plan, their, everything in the book, and then you can read the book. Yes, you can take a course. Yes, you can watch videos. Yes, you can do a bunch of stuff, but a book is super powerful. So what I did when I got this book is, number one, I got the audiobook because I kind of knew, what the book was going to be about generally from reading the reviews. And I thought what I really want to do is be able to, consume this book while I'm driving, but I also want to be able to make notes. And if I have an audiobook, I'm not going to be able to easily make notes. So I bought the Kindle version because I like the Kindle version because it easily allows me to read things and highlight. That's my system for capturing information in a book, is highlighting. And then I can, push that stuff into Evernote and I have all my notes in Evernote. But I also ordered the paperback because I also like being able to flip around and find things quickly. And that's harder with a Kindle and obviously impossible with an audiobook. So I bought this book 3 times because this book is really good. And I plan to get the most out of it. To me, this is a gift from the heavens. So I think this answers the questions. And that's basically it. That's what you need to do. Buy this book, read it. And if you have questions after reading it and implementing it about how to build systems, then shoot me an email or get in touch with me because your questions now are going to be about the mechanics of systems, not about something foundational. And I think it's important that we address the foundational stuff first and foremost. So that's what we just did. So I will look forward to continuing to help you in the next lesson. But meanwhile, if you want to get more of my free guidance, you can go check out my personal website with this link here, ernietheattorney.net, or you can just Google Ernie the Attorney and you'll find the website that way. And you can also visit my main business website, which is lawfirmautopilot.com.